All right, part two of our lymphatic system notes. I'm just kind of backdating a little bit. We talked about the lymphatic system, just some very basics. Now I want to talk about how the lymphatic system uses what we call the immune system, how it keeps us from being sick all the time. The world is a dirty place. It is full of all types of things that are looking to make us sick. And how come we don't sit around sick all the time? I know some people are like, I'm always sick. Yeah, their immune system may be working very actively. Maybe they have certain characteristics in their body that causes them to be more apt to get sick by different pathogens. And some people say, I never get sick. Their immune system is doing very well. Now, there are certain things that can affect our immune system. If it's genetic, then we're out of luck, depending on what kind of genetic complications you may have passed on from mom and dad. But things like diet, exercise is also very important. So daily exercise, getting your heart rate up, and also sleep, getting plenty of sleep. And that's something as teenagers I know that you get plenty of, right? But you should. You should strive to, because that's when your body kind of heals itself. Your immune system can kick in and rest. Your body can focus on that instead of doing whatever you're doing. Thinking very hard at school, of course. That's what you're doing. All right, some quick terms to know that we're going to talk about with the immune system. The pathogen. A pathogen is any agent that causes disease or illness in its host. We think about things like bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites. They are looking to cause sickness, right? They're causing disease or illness. An infection is when pathogens get into the body, they invade, and then they typically will multiply. They make more of themselves, causing that host, us in this case, to become sick. Okay, become sick and get this illness. So a pathogen causes disease, and infection is what we call disease. Let's talk about something called non-specific defenses. Of course, that probably means we'll have specific defenses in a little bit. I want you to think about this. If I was a pathogen, let's say I'm a nice little virus, because that's what we've been dealing with in our world lately, and I'm trying to get you sick, there are several obstacles that I'm going to have to overcome. Some are very basic, some get a little more in depth. The first line of defense is what we call mechanical barriers. And this is our skin. If you think back to the integumentary system, the skin does a good job of blocking out a lot of pathogens. Think about how dirty the skin is right now. Your skin is. We talk about washing our hands and using hand sanitizer and all this kind of stuff. It's because they're all over our skin. That's better than being inside of us, right? That's better than being in our bloodstream, or that's why we don't touch our mouth with our hands or our nose. We don't want those things to get in there. These are mechanical barriers. It also includes mucous membranes. Think about it like this. If you breathe in bacteria or a virus, our hair in our nose and in our sinus nasal cavities can trap them. And then fluid from the mucous membrane, so mucus, can typically wash them away, right? It can wash them down our throat into our stomach. You can sneeze them out, blow them out inside that mucus and that snot that we would think about. Okay, so mechanical barriers like the skin. Then we have chemical barriers. This is our second line of defense. If it happens to get past those mechanical barriers, these chemical barriers hopefully ready to kill whatever pathogen we're talking about. Enzymes are complex proteins that cause a specific chemical change in other substances without being changed themselves. Enzymes are constantly being used inside not only us, but all living things. Think about a chemical barrier like our stomach acid, right? Our gastric juices that are in our stomach. Pathogens that we just talked about, we kind of get trapped in our mucus and we swallow them. They typically will die inside of our stomach juices. Our gastric juices are full of that pepsin enzyme and also hydrochloric acid, that's HCl. Tears contains an enzyme called lysozyme. Lysozyme is an antibacterial agent, so it can kill a lot of bacteria. That's why our eyes start swelling up and tearing. It's actually trying to remove it, yes, but it kills any bacteria that may have gotten in there. And our sweat contains a good bit of salt, and a lot of bacteria are very sensitive to salinity. So sweat, this salt's found in it, can kill them. Another line of defense, our second line of defense still besides those chemical agents, a fever. Okay, a fever. We oftentimes go, oh, fevers are horrible. It's so bad. It's actually a sign that our body is doing something. A fever, when that temperature rises, it causes our body's immune system to make more white blood cells. White blood cells are our defense. Okay, it's one of our defenses. that we go against. It also can cause something called antibodies. We're going to look at that. And other agents that's looking to kill any infections, any pathogens. Higher body temperatures cause the liver and spleen to collect iron from the blood. This causes the growth of bacteria, viruses, and all to cease. Okay, viruses and bacteria do best at normal body temperature. Okay, right around there. We start getting a little higher than that, 100, 101. They don't do as well. So we think, oh man, he's got a fever. It's 102. That's horrible. It is. It's just showing that our body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Now, we can't let it sit there at 102 for days on end or hours on end. Really, that's why you try to cool it down and try to get that temperature down. But what it's doing is killing off these things in our body. But if the bacteria, the viruses are reproducing or replicating at such a rate that our body can't really keep up with that, our immune systems can't keep up with it, that fever can become detrimental, can become even deadly, causing organ damage to things like our brain. So, fever, inflammation inside our body. We've talked about inflammation before, one of our previous unit. So this is a tissue's response to injury or infection. It includes redness, swelling, heat, and pain. Okay, these are all because the body's trying to do its job. Basically, it's increasing blood flow, getting those white blood cells rushed to that area, that tissue that has been damaged or infected, trying to allow those white blood cells a chance to kill whatever pathogens may have came in. Speaking of the white blood cells, phagocytes. They surround, they engulf, they destroy foreign substances in a process called phagocytosis. If you remember back in biology, you might remember endocytosis and exocytosis. It's a way that a cell gets certain things like proteins or carbohydrates in or out of itself. Phagocytosis is a really specialized way of bringing things in. What it does is a white blood cell, like this phagocyte here, it looks like a little squid or octopus thing. It will reach out and surround that bacterium, so a type of bacteria, and grab it and pull it into itself and then use enzymes within itself to break it down. Pus, which you've oftentimes heard about, is a real medical term. It's not just, hey, a bunch of fluid over here. Pus is actually what happens when phagocytes die. It leaves us with some dead tissue, some dead bacteria, and then also live and dead phagocytes. So it's showing, hey, there's been an infection. This pus is left over from the destruction of that pathogen. You see here too, more active phagocytic cells. Neutrophils, they engulf and digest smaller particles. Primarily they fight bacteria. Monocytes, they go after larger particles. Monocytes give rise to macrophages. Which lymph nodes, spleen, lungs, we've already looked at some of those, just two different types of cells that do a really good job. Then we have the third line of defense. We had our first line, the mechanical barrier, skin, mucous membranes. The second line of defense, all the stuff we just talked about. And the third line of defense is called immunity. Immunity is the body's resistance to effects of disease-causing agents. Okay, immunity is what we gain over time. Immunity is what really comes, if you've ever had a kid or been around a kid or a little brother, sister, all that kind of stuff, they're sick all the time, it seems like. It's because their body's not used to all the different pathogens that are in the world. So they get sick to it. The body can gain a tolerance to those certain things and hopefully not be sick of it every time that they come in contact with pathogens. It's typically why people in adolescence or after puberty and then young adulthood are really good health-wise. Compared to small children, is because they've been around it, okay? They've been exposed to certain pathogens and their body has gained an immunity, a resistance to it. Just a few little things, making sure I'm not needing to stop real quick. Some specific defenses. Remember a minute ago we talked about non-specific defenses. In other words, just blocking out everything. Specific defenses, there's several different ones. An antigen, think how this word really comes about from antibody generating. Okay, it's something that causes antibodies, which we're going to talk about in a minute, or an immunogen, something that generates immunity, okay, is a substance that induces or causes the formation of antibodies because it recognizes a threat. Okay, an antigen is usually a foreign substance from the environment. Okay, so I always like to use the example of pollen. I get sick about twice a year when the pollen starts to come out or it changes a little bit. And what that pollen is, it's an antigen. It's going to cause a response from my body, antibodies, and give me about 3 or 4 days, and I'm going to be just fine. Why? Because these antibodies are being produced. That's going to take care of it, okay? It's going to take care of it. Lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are one of the 5 types of white blood cells. The 2 that I like to talk about, the 2 that are the most common, are T cells and B cells. Okay, they stand for T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes. T originate in the bone marrow, and then they go to the thymus for what's called differentiation. Differentiation is going to help them go after certain pathogens, whether it be bacteria or viral or whatever. B cells originate and stay in the bone marrow. See how they get their names? T cell, it migrates, it stays in the thymus after it's made. B cells originates and stays in the bone marrow until it's differentiated. So these 2 are major players, as we're going to see right here, in immunity. What do? B cells produce antibodies that destroy certain or specific foreign antigens. So these antigens that are coming into our body, these B cells kind of read what it is. You can think of it like that. It reads what it is, and it causes this differentiation that produces certain antibodies. Okay, and then these antibodies, they kill whatever pathogens coming in, and then they circulate. They continue to flow through our body fluids, our humors. Okay, and what happens is these B cells then are in our system, right? So when we're exposed to whatever pathogen it was that helped create these antibodies, these B cells remember it, and it's able to target it when they come in contact with it again and destroy it, hopefully before we get sick again. Okay, and they can reproduce themselves. A really cool defense mechanism, this immunity. Their T cells, remember these are the ones in the thymus. There's 3 different types: killer, helper, and suppressor T cells. All of them work together to destroy certain antigens or whatever's coming in that's going to cause, a reaction. T cells themselves do not produce antibodies. Okay, B cells do. Instead, these T cells, they directly attack antigens. They provide something called cell-mediated immunity. Helper T cells are like antibodies. What they do is they come along and they tag certain bacteria. They'll leave a chemical trace on these pathogens, and then other T cells, the killer ones, will come in and destroy them. Okay, so it's instead of creating these antibodies, these little protein bodies, they themselves go and attack them. So B cells and T cells do basically the same thing. They just take a different route to do it. They work together to hopefully control all pathogens that come in. Antibodies, here's where we're getting to. I probably should have put this earlier on, but whatever. Are a type of protein that are produced in response to foreign substances. Okay, the antigen comes in, whatever it may be, it causes a response to be made. These proteins come together to destroy it. Each antibody is unique. Okay, it defends against one specific type of antigen. Think about how we've seen different variations or strands, I think they've been calling it, of the COVID-19 virus. You might be immune to a certain type, but then, oh no, the same thing. What's going on? It's because it changed. Okay, our antibodies may have got used to one variation, and then we've been exposed to another one. It's the same way with the flu, year in and year out. You might be immune to a certain strand of the flu from last year, and then a certain different type comes this year, and it gets you. Okay, and you get the flu. It's not because your antibodies aren't working. It's because they only target one certain type. It's because the protein structure in that pathogen is a little different. So the antibody pathogen or protein structure is different in response to it. Antibodies continue to exist in a person's body. Most of them last for a very, very long time. And if the same antigen becomes present in the immune system again, the antibodies are already there to do their job. That's why they last. One way of thinking about it is each germ or each pathogen that comes in has proteins called antigens on its surface. They cause antibodies to be made to attack that pathogen that's coming in. Think about it like a boat dock. If there's one boat already there, you can't fill the same space, right? You can't do it. Antibodies fill the germ's boat dock so it can attach to a cell and infect it again. All right, it fills up that void, hopefully causing you to be immune. Please watch this video and watch it again if you need to, and use it to answer anything on assignments.